Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever. I'm on my travels again. We've had a very successful few days with the shrine installation in Clinton, Massachusetts, and then a very successful parish retreat and mission in Greenwich, Connecticut. I'm now, through the kindness of friends, having a couple of days in the warmth, toasting. Better to toast in this world than in the next. One of the most difficult questions for Christians, and one of the most perennial, is the question of assimilation or separation from the culture of the day. We might think that during the times of so-called Christendom, or even when society as a whole seemed to be Christian in most laws and practices, that question would not have arisen. But that difficult divide has always been there. Partly that explains the question to Jesus of what to give to Caesar, and the response Jesus gave, which stunned his listeners, of giving to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and to God what belongs to God. We know, of course, from another question that the Lord responded to was that the first and greatest commandment is essentially God first in all things. So there's no denying the difficulty that all generations of believers have had to grapple with when it comes to living in societies which begin to deviate from Christian practice either slowly or very rapidly. An obvious example of the sudden and rapid deviation from Christian society would be the experience of living under communism or Nazism. We know sadly, but who are we to say how we would have responded, that many assimilated or stayed silent in the face of oppression and violence. Yet many, the brave and the faithful remnant, families, priests, religious, and so many ordinary believers, were courageous and stood out from the crowd and often suffered for it. It's undeniable that we are now living in a time of rapid de-Christianization or even Christophobia. I heard just in the last few weeks of a district in England where a local law has been established barring believers from praying near abortion facilities and even outlawing making the sign of the cross or praying audibly in England in 2022. There are many other changes in society where we are tempted to acquiesce and be silent or to swim against the tide. Scripture, as always, gives us help and inspiration. I've been struck in recent weeks reading extracts from the two books of the Maccabees in the Old Testament, both how current and how difficult this question of assimilation and acceptance, or a countercultural reaction, can be for faithful believers through the centuries. Sometimes it can be described as fight or flight, or I would say act against or accept. Most people, I assume, know the basic story of the Book of Maccabees, how after the invasion of Alexander the Great and the Greek control of Judea, a growing policy of Hellenization was introduced, forcing upon the Jewish population Greek or pagan practices and the outlawing of Jewish custom and belief. Many, we are told, for multiple reasons, including fear, economic or social advantage, went along with the tide, despite it giving, as it were, to Caesar everything and nothing for God. The faithful few, among them Judas Maccabeus, stood firm and were ready to fight. So what do? There will be times where prudence calls for faithful and careful thought, and battles must be chosen wisely. However, prudence is never an excuse for inaction, and it's not eternal. Some have mischaracterized my friend Rod Dreher's book, The Benedict Option, as a call to head for the hills. In other words, the flight option. I think although that might for some become a possibility, he's really saying, be prepared for battle. Be as the faithful Maccabees. Be ready to decide when giving to Caesar, in whatever form he appears, becomes idol worship and the rejection of godly truth. When that happens, prudence has been exhausted. Brethren, all God's blessings upon you.